Hannah, you're nothing to me now. This is my house, Evelyn declared coldly, standing over me as I lay collapsed, blood dripping from the gash on my head at the spot where she shattered the crystal vase. Everything had begun so innocently when David and I were married 5 years ago. We were deeply in love, and I was overjoyed to start our life together. Yet Evelyn had embarked on a twisted mission to create discord between us from the very beginning. "She's simply jealous because you're so young and pretty." David would dismiss her ongoing criticisms and hurtful comments. I should have seen those as warnings of the turmoil ahead. Initially, it was minor criticisms about my cooking or the way I managed the household. Soon, she began to insinuate more overtly that I was unworthy of David or his wealth. As I endeavored to maintain peace, her remarks grew harsher. "You're nothing but a gold digger after a free ride," she would hiss during her tirades when David wasn't present. "My brother is too good for you." Despite the mounting proof of her manipulation, David remained blind to Evelyn's true nature, seeing her as his flawless older sister whom he could not fault. Whether it was guilt for being the favored child or mere brainwashing, he consistently sided with her. The situation escalated when I found bank statements that revealed Evelyn had been gradually draining money from their inheritance since their parents passed away. Armed with evidence of her deceit, I confronted David, but he exploded, accusing me of meddling in family matters. "How dare you accuse my sister of such a thing?" he bellowed, his face turning beet red. "You're the one with an issue, always trying to find reasons to despise her." It was then that Evelyn took her chance to act like the wronged party while casting me as the villain. Out of nowhere, the vase hit the side of my head, and as I fell to the ground, her figure towered over me with menacing final words. Lying there dazed and struggling to stay conscious while Evelyn gloated over her impending victory, I realized the true nature of my situation. David, the love of my life, just stood by like a coward, unable to confront his manipulative sister. It was then I knew my marriage was unsalvageable, but I was determined not to let that sociopath take everything from me without a fight. I should have recognized the warning signs earlier, but I was too blinded by love and Evelyn's manipulative prowess. "Oh, Hannah, this pot roast is a tad dry, don't you think?" Evelyn would comment with a saccharine smile during her weekly dinner visits, subtly undermining me. "You really need to keep an eye on things in the kitchen." David would simply laugh it off, reassuring me, "Evelyn's just teasing, it's all fine, honey." Yet it was a recurring pattern. She mocked my domestic skills and my appearance, subtly chipping away at my confidence as David's wife. She spent money on anything to belittle me and make me appear inadequate, and David soaked up his sister's toxic words. Gradually, they shifted his loving gaze to one of doubt and disdain. "Don't you think that dress is a bit revealing?" he began to comment when we went out. "My sister's right, you could be a little more modest." The emotional torment only intensified over the years. Evelyn would storm in like a whirlwind, leaving chaos and distress in her wake with each visit. David increasingly sided with her, chiding me for being too sensitive whenever I pointed out her cruelty. "She's my sister, Hannah, blood," he would fume, his 6'3" frame towering over me. "You need to learn to accept her." Meanwhile, Evelyn adopted the role of the victim, batting her eyes innocently whenever I confronted her. "I'm just trying to help, that's all. You're always so defensive for no reason." I felt cornered, as if the walls were closing in with no escape. My once adoring husband had turned into Evelyn's accomplice, allowing her to treat me like dirt in my own home. I knew I needed to uncover proof of her truly sinister nature before it was too late. That proof emerged when I found bank statements showing Evelyn had been covertly draining money from the inheritance she shared with David after their parents passed away. I couldn't believe my eyes. This was more than her usual mind games. She was outright stealing from her own brother. "Look at this," I implored David desperately, showing him the statements. "Your precious sister has been robbing you blind." His face turned beet red with rage, but not at the betrayal I had uncovered. "How dare you snoop through my private financial records? What gives you the right?" he exploded. "Are you serious?" I cried out, feeling as though I had been punched in the gut. "She's been taking your money for years, and you're attacking me." That's when Evelyn played her most cunning move, rushing into the room with tears streaming down her face. "David, I had no choice," she sobbed, pulling him into an embrace. "The medical bills for Mom's cancer treatments, the nursing home fees for Dad. I've been drowning in debt from taking care of them. I didn't want to worry you." Hook, line, and sinker. Just like that, the despicable leech had flipped the narrative, positioning herself as the martyr making sacrifices for the family. David pulled away from me, disgust on his face. "See what you've done, Hannah. How could you put my sister through this, after everything she's done for us?" I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Evelyn just smirked at me, having secured yet another twisted victory. In that moment, I realized I was truly alone in this nightmare, which ignited a reckless determination to bring down my tormentor, no matter what it took. The tension in the house was thicker than fog following Evelyn's latest manipulative stunt. David could barely look me in the eye, still furious over my betrayal of delving into his finances and exposing his precious sister's lies. "How could you do this to me, Hannah?" He seethed across the dinner table, pushing his plate away. "Accusing Evelyn of stealing from her own family? She sacrificed everything for us." I opened my mouth to protest, but he raised his hand to silence me. "Don't. I don't want to hear another word against her. My sister is the only one I can really trust." The message was clear. I was now the enemy for daring to challenge Evelyn's false narrative about being overwhelmed with debt from caring for their parents. David had completely bought into her story. I should have realized then that there was no saving our marriage, but a small delusional part of me still held on to hope. I decided to make one last attempt to reach David and reveal his sister's malevolence. A few nights later, Evelyn arrived for another family dinner, dressed provocatively in a gaudy, low-cut top, seemingly aimed to provoke me. David and I could barely exchange a few words before she started her usual tirade. Well, if it isn't the little wife trying so hard to maintain appearances," she sneered as I set the table. "That shirt looks a bit tight, doesn't it, dear? Trying to catch someone's eye besides my brother's." I felt my cheeks flush with humiliation, but this time I refused to rise to her bait. "Hello, Evelyn. Lovely to see you too," I responded, maintaining my composure. She arched a meticulously plucked eyebrow at my calm tone. "What? No snide remarks today? Don't tell me you finally learned some class." "That's enough, Evelyn," David finally barked, showing some backbone. "Leave her alone." I felt a wave of gratitude. He was actually defending me, but Evelyn just scoffed and shook her head slowly. "David, you're too blind to see what a disrespectful, ungrateful shrew she is, always mouthing off. No wonder you can't control her. If I were you, I would have put that little troublemaker in her place a long time ago." That's when chaos erupted. "You self-righteous," I exploded, sending a glass of wine crashing to the floor. "I should have known you'd never stop with your vicious, toxic behavior." Evelyn recoiled in feigned shock. "Why, I never." "David, did you hear what she just called me?" David's face was thunderous. "You watch your mouth, Hannah. That's my sister you're talking to." I rounded on him, years of anger and resentment boiling over. "Are you kidding me right now? She's the one who came in here throwing insults from the moment she walked through the door. Why are you making excuses for her?" "Because she's my family," he roared, spittle flying from his mouth. "Blood is thicker than water, in case you've forgotten." "Oh yes, let's talk about family," I shot back, seeing red. "Like how she's been stealing money from your inheritance for years? Or did you just conveniently forget about those bank statements I showed you?" Evelyn gasped, putting a delicate hand to her chest. "David, you didn't tell me she was still harping on that ridiculous accusation." How dare you continue to spread lies about me? David exclaimed, looking as if he had been slapped. The vein in his neck was bulging as he stepped toward me, fists clenched, and for a terrifying moment, I thought he might strike me. Get out, he said in a low, trembling voice. Get out of my house right now before I do something I'll regret. I stared at him in disbelief as Evelyn smirked behind him. This was it. My marriage was over, and she had triumphed. But I didn't leave just yet. You want me out so badly, I shouted, feeling reckless. Fine, I'm gone, but not before everyone knows what a psychopathic, money-grubbing snake your sister really is. I stormed out of the house that night, tears of rage and despair burning my eyes. David had made his choice clear. His toxic sister would always come first, no matter how much turmoil she caused me. Where could I even go? I had sacrificed my career, my friends, and my entire life to be David's wife, and now I was out on the street with nothing. All because I had dared to defy his unhinged, beloved Evelyn. There was only one person I could turn to, my best friend, Laura. I broke down sobbing when she opened her door, releasing the torrent of emotions I had suppressed for years. That evil woman has ruined everything, I wailed as Laura ushered me inside. David is so brainwashed, he'll never see her for the manipulative monster she truly is. Laura wrapped me in a tight hug, letting me cry it all out. When I finally regained my composure, she looked me square in the eye with grim determination. Enough is enough, Hannah. You can't let Evelyn walk all over you like this. It's time to fight back. I shook my head despondently. Against her? You don't know the half of what I've been through. She's got David so wrapped around her finger, he'll never believe a word I say about her true nature. Then we need evidence, Laura stated firmly. Proof that she's the conniving psychopath you say she is. Once we have that, we can bring her down for good. A flicker of hope ignited in my chest. The bank statements showing her stealing from their inheritance were just the tip of the iceberg. There had to be more we could find to expose her. Laura nodded grimly. We start digging first thing tomorrow morning. I'm not letting my best friend's life be destroyed by this witch. Over the next few days, Laura and I formulated a plan to infiltrate David's home and gather any information that could take Evelyn down for good. With her working as a realtor, it was easy for Laura to make a copy of the house keys and scope out when David was at work. Keep your eyes peeled for anything suspicious, she instructed as we slipped into the house. Emails, letters, documents, it all could be the key to exposing her. I rifled through David's office with trembling hands, my heart pounding. If Evelyn found out what we were doing, the thought of the repercussions made me shudder. But then a hidden file caught my attention. It contained bank statements and legal papers from several years back. As I flipped through the pages, I felt the blood drain from my face. Laura, you need to see this, I said, my voice trembling. The documents confirmed my worst fears. Evelyn had been under investigation for allegedly attempting to murder her own husband years earlier. There were witness statements claiming she had been draining his accounts and pressuring him to alter his will. Then he had mysteriously died in a suspicious car crash, with the police unable to establish foul play. Evelyn had inherited everything, and the case had gone cold. Oh my God, Laura gasped, covering her mouth. Are you saying this lunatic actually killed her husband for his money? I nodded slowly, feeling numb. And she's been trying to do the same to David. That's why she's so determined to turn him against me. I'm the only thing standing in the way of her getting to my husband's inheritance. Laura's gaze turned steely. We have all we need now. It's time to make her pay for her crimes once and for all. A dark resolve washed over me, dispelling the fear and doubt. Evelyn's reign of terror was about to collapse around her, and this time there would be no playing the victim. The evidence of Evelyn's murderous past silenced me. This went beyond her typical schemes and manipulations. She was a genuine psychopath who had likely killed for money before. We need to take this to the police immediately, Laura declared, her face pale. Who knows what that maniac is capable of if she's already gotten away with murder? I nodded, still in shock from the discovery. Part of me had always suspected Evelyn was deranged, but having proof that she was an actual murderer escalated the situation to a horrifying new level. You don't understand, I said, feeling hollow. David will never believe any of this, no matter what we show him. He's too deeply under her spell. Laura's jaw set firmly. Then we ensure she's brought to justice, with or without his help. This has gone far enough. It's time for her to face some serious consequences. Over the next few days, we reviewed the files, compiling an irrefutable case to present to the authorities. Bank statements, witness accounts, even phone records indicated that Evelyn's husband had been trying to escape her grip in the months before his tragic accident. Everything was falling into place, revealing the truth. The most chilling detail was the photos from the crime scene. A wrecked car in a ditch, the body removed and enclosed in a black bag beside the road. I had to look away, sickened by the realization that Evelyn could have orchestrated such a gruesome demise just to claim her husband's fortune. You know she's planning to do the same to David once I'm out of the picture, I murmured to Laura, my voice shaking. First, it was his inheritance from their parents, and now she wants everything: the house, the cars, the entire lifestyle I built with him. She'll stop at nothing. Laura looked at me with determination. Not if we stop her first. We've got everything we need to put this monster away for the rest of her life, where she can't hurt anyone else. The next day, we took the file to the police precinct and requested to meet with a detective. I could barely speak as I handed over the evidence detailing Evelyn's escalating campaign of abuse and violence against me. The grizzled cop flipped through the documents, his eyes widening. You're telling me this woman got away with murdering her husband for his money years ago, and now she's trying to do the same thing to her own brother? He asked, his tone incredulous. I nodded miserably. David is under her total control. She's completely brainwashed him into taking her side over me, no matter what horrible thing she does. If you don't stop her reign of terror, I'm afraid of what she's capable of. The detective's jaw tightened grimly. Don't worry, ma'am. We've got more than enough here to lock this Evelyn up and throw away the key. Trying to kill her own flesh and blood for inheritance money. That's a new low, even for my line of work. He paused, seeming to study me closely. I've got to ask, how did you manage to get all this evidence on her? This is one hell of a case file you've put together. I felt a rush of adrenaline as the weight of everything came crashing down. This was it, the beginning of the end for Evelyn's twisted reign. No more games, no more manipulation or fake tears. Just cold, hard consequences for her unforgivable actions. Let's just say I've had a lot of practice seeing through that snake's lies, I replied tightly. It's time she finally paid for what she's done to my family. As they led me out, I could have sworn I saw the cop give me the faintest of nods, a look of respect on his weathered face. In that moment, I realized I had been underestimated as a mere victim for far too long. Now the merciless former predator was about to become the prey, and this time I would be the one showing no mercy. I should have known Evelyn wouldn't go down without one final vicious fight. The day after Laura and I took our damning evidence to the police, the demon herself was waiting when I returned to my friend's apartment. Well, well, if it isn't the ungrateful little schemer, she sneered as I froze in the doorway. Evelyn rose from the couch, hands on her hips and eyes glittering with malice. I knew you were plotting something behind my back. My heart pounded, but I refused to show fear. Get out of here, Evelyn. It's over. The police know everything about what you did. Rather than looking scared, she threw back her head and laughed, a cold, cruel sound that made my blood run cold. You stupid girl, she hissed. Did you really think a few measly documents would be enough to take me down? In that terrible moment, before I could even blink, Evelyn lunged. She snatched a heavy crystal vase from the end table, raising it high like a weapon. "This is what you get for meddling," she shrieked. Then, with sickening force, the vase crashed down on my head. Pain exploded, blinding and brutal, and darkness swallowed me whole. I slumped to the floor, a lifeless heap, warm blood oozing from the wound. Evelyn loomed over me, her face contorted in rage. "You're dead, do you? Hear me," she snarled, spittle flying. "This is my home now, my life. I'll make David see you for what you are, a liar and a spiteful shrew." I tried to speak, to fight back, but unconsciousness claimed me. The last thing I saw was David bursting through the doorway, his face a mask of horror. "Evelyn, what have you done?" he cried. Then oblivion. I drifted in and out of consciousness, snippets of voices and movement reaching me through a haze. At one point, I swore I heard sirens wailing in the distance. Finally, I awoke in a hospital bed. Laura sat beside me, her face etched with worry. My head throbbed with a white-hot agony, and thick bandages swaddled my skull. "Oh, Hannah, thank goodness you're awake," Laura whispered, squeezing my hand. "I thought I'd lost you." Memories flooded back, Evelyn's twisted grin, the shattering vase, the searing pain, the blood. "She tried to kill me," I rasped, my voice a hoarse croak. "Where is she? Did they arrest her?" Laura looked away, her expression troubled. "The police took her in, but Hannah, you won't believe it. David refused to press charges. He claims it was a misunderstanding, that you two were arguing over him." Fury surged through me, momentarily pushing aside the pain. Ignoring the throbbing in my head, I ripped the IV from my arm and tried to rise. "That spineless coward," I growled. "After what she did, he's still defending her." Laura gently pressed a hand on my shoulder. "Hannah, you need to rest. Calm down." I wanted to scream, to unleash my rage, but a cold reality washed over me. My husband was so blinded by Evelyn's lies that he'd let her attack me, then defend her actions. Our marriage was shattered beyond repair. "You're right," I conceded, sinking back against the pillows. "It's over. David's too far gone. He'll never see her for the monster she truly is." But even as I spoke those words, a strange sense of peace settled over me. In that moment, I understood my fight wasn't with David anymore. It was with Evelyn, the venomous snake herself. And this time, consumed by a relentless desire for justice. I knew I wouldn't rest until Evelyn faced the consequences of her actions. The games were over. Tears and pleas for David to see sense wouldn't work. It was time to strike a decisive blow before his deranged sister inflicted further destruction on innocent lives. Turning to Laura, my eyes hardened with resolve. "We need to leave. I have a plan to ensure Evelyn never hurts another soul. Are you in?" Without hesitation, Laura offered a determined nod. "Absolutely. Let's finally make that psycho pay for her crimes." An eerie silence descended upon the hospital room as David entered, his face a mask of uncertainty. My body tensed, and I instinctively grasped Laura's hand, seeking support. "What brings you here?" I asked flatly, unable to mask the bitterness in my voice. "More excuses for your deranged sister." Though flinching lightly at my tone, David didn't take the bait. Instead, he slumped heavily into a chair, weariness etched on his face. "Hannah, I don't know where to begin," he admitted quietly. "What Evelyn did, trying to kill you in cold blood, it's—" His voice trailed off, his head shaking slowly. Despite the gravity of his words, I felt no sense of vindication, only a weary resignation and simmering anger. "Save it," I interrupted coldly. "Your sister's a psychopathic murderer, and on some level, you knew it all along. You simply chose to ignore the ugly truth because she was blood." Before David could protest, years of pent-up resentment bubbled over. "Don't even try to deny it. I showed you proof of her stealing your inheritance, manipulating you against me, even those files exposing her as her own husband's killer for money. But you couldn't be bothered to face the truth. A soft admission, almost inaudible. You're right. David's shoulders slumped in defeat. Absolutely right, Hannah. I've been so deep in denial about Evelyn that I let her control my life. I let her abuse you, manipulate me, and turn me against my own wife. He looked up, his eyes haunted by regret. That will forever torment me. You never deserved any of that hell. I was simply too blind and weak to resist her twisted games. White-hot anger flared in my chest, and I struggled to maintain composure. So what now? I asked, my voice shaking. Am I supposed to forgive and forget? Let you off the hook because you finally recognized your sister for the monster she is? David shook his head slowly. No, forgiveness and another chance. I don't deserve either, not after what I allowed to happen under my own roof. The pronouncement hung heavy in the air. It was over between us. The blow, though expected, landed with the force of a physical attack. Despite my resignation to the broken state of our marriage, a delusional sliver of hope had clung to me. A fantasy that David would seek amends after Evelyn's wickedness was exposed. I'm filing for divorce immediately, he continued, his gaze fixed elsewhere. And I won't contest anything. The house, the assets, it's all yours. Evelyn's poisonous touch stole the best thing I ever had, and this meager offering is the least I can do. Words failed me. A part of me yearned to unleash a torrent of anger, to hurl accusations at the shell of the man I loved, but a deeper emptiness prevailed, devoid of the catharsis I craved from his surrender. Laura's voice, laced with contempt, broke the silence. So that's it? You just slink away, leaving your deranged sister to rot in jail. Typical. I wish there was more I could say or do, David rasped, his shoulders slumped. But we both know there's no coming back from what I allowed to happen. You deserve so much better, Hannah. With that, he rose and shuffled towards the door. Pausing at the threshold, he cast one final glance back. For what it's worth, I am sorry, truly sorry for everything. Then he was gone, leaving me amidst the wreckage of our life. Tears streamed down my face as Laura engulfed me in a hug, a dam bursting and releasing the tidal wave of anger, pain, and heartbreak I'd bottled up for so long. My marriage was over. My husband lost to Evelyn's toxic influence. Yet amidst the mourning, a strange sense of freedom and resolve bloomed. David might have been too weak to stand up to his twisted sister, but I wouldn't be. Evelyn's reign of terror would end, one way or another. In the days that followed David's departure, I stood at a crossroads. One path led to despair, a descent into the ashes of my failed marriage, consumed by the trauma and betrayal. The other blazed with an icy determination to set things right. Soon, I declared, my voice hardening with conviction. We can't let Evelyn just get away with this. She tried to kill me, her own sister-in-law. That kind of depravity can't go unanswered. Laura met my gaze with a grim nod. You're right. For too long, that psycho has slithered away from consequences. It's time the law catches up with her, once and for all. With renewed purpose, we embarked on a mission, compiling every shred of evidence to ensure justice would be served. Our case against Evelyn was ironclad. We had financial documents, witness statements, a meticulous paper trail chronicling her decades-long web of greed, manipulation, and likely murder. This should be enough to bury that viper for good. Laura eyed the hefty file with grim satisfaction. No more crocodile tears getting her out of this one, she muttered. A surge of adrenaline pulsed through me, my heart hammering. This was it, the first steps to ensure Evelyn could never hurt another innocent person like she almost did to me. I was finally reclaiming my power, wresting it back from her toxic grip. We marched straight to the downtown police precinct, requesting a detective. A seasoned officer in a rumpled suit eventually ushered us into an interview room, his eyes narrowing as he skimmed through the damning evidence. You're telling me this Evelyn has been swindling and manipulating her own family for years? He inquired slowly. Possibly even killed her first husband. I met his gaze with unwavering resolve. That's correct, detective. And her latest act, attempting to murder me, her own sister-in-law, by bashing my skull in. She's a ruthless psychopath who will stop at nothing. The cop's jaw clenched tight as he studied the crime scene photos, the undeniable evidence of Evelyn's brutal attack. I've seen a lot of scum in my days, he conceded, but this is a whole new level of depravity. He slammed the file shut and fixed me with an intense stare. Ms. Larson, let me assure you, we're taking this case very seriously. With the mountain of evidence you've provided, we're confident we can put this woman away for a long, long time. A weight lifted off my shoulders, followed by a wave of lightheaded relief. After years of gaslighting and torment, my voice was finally heard, my claims about Evelyn's cruelty believed. Thank you, detective, I said, my voice trembling slightly. You have no idea what it means to know the law won't allow her evil to go unpunished this time. The cop offered a curt smile. No need for thanks, ma'am. We're just doing our job, taking a dangerous predator off the streets. You're the one who showed true courage by confronting Evelyn's abuse and refusing to back down. Leaving the precinct with Laura, a wave of peace and resolution washed over me. Despite the challenges ahead, Evelyn's reign of terror would finally face justice. No matter how much she cried wolf, in that moment, I realized my bitter struggle had forged a strength I never knew I possessed. The once meek and tormented wife was no more. I was a survivor, rising from the ashes of Evelyn's twisted games, ready to fight another day. And this time, I would be victorious while she reaped the bitter consequences her actions so richly deserved. As days passed after my release from the hospital, I felt the weight of years of emotional and physical abuse slowly lifting. Evelyn was out of my life, though not yet behind bars. Laura and I had done everything we could to gather evidence, and now it was up to the legal system to bring her down. But I wasn't waiting around anymore. I had a life to rebuild. David and I finalized the divorce quietly. He moved out of the house almost immediately, unable to bear the constant reminder of the havoc his sister had wrought on our marriage. Despite everything, I felt no anger toward him anymore, only pity. He was a broken man, a victim of his sister's manipulations, but that didn't excuse his choices. His loyalty to Evelyn had cost him his marriage, his home, and his happiness. The house was mine now, a hollow victory I hadn't expected to feel so bittersweet. I sold it within weeks, not wanting to stay in the place where I had been so humiliated and hurt. The money I got from the sale was enough to start over, far away from the city where my old life had crumbled. Meanwhile, Evelyn faced her reckoning. The police investigation, combined with the evidence Laura and I had provided, was enough to build a strong case. With witness statements from her first husband's friends and financial records showing her embezzlement and attempted fraud, the authorities reopened the investigation into her husband's mysterious death. The day of Evelyn's arrest, I got a call from the detective handling the case. "It's over, Ms. Larson," he said with a grim satisfaction in his voice. "We've got her. Evelyn won't be hurting anyone else." Relief washed over me, but it wasn't triumph that I felt. It was closure. After years of torment, I was finally free from Evelyn's web of lies and cruelty. Evelyn's trial was set for the following year. She faced charges of embezzlement, assault, and fraud, along with a reopened investigation into her husband's suspicious death. Though she denied everything at first, the mounting evidence was undeniable. Her facade of innocence finally shattered in court when a former acquaintance of her late husband testified, providing damning evidence that Evelyn had pressured her husband to change his will shortly before his death. She was sentenced to 20 years in prison. The media covered the story widely, calling her a black widow who preyed on family members for financial gain. While Evelyn might have believed she could manipulate her way out of anything, this time there was no escaping justice. As for David, I never saw him again after our divorce was finalized. He left the city, possibly to escape the shame of what had happened. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he had checked into a rehabilitation program for emotional trauma. He'd lost everything: his wife, his home, and his sister, whom he had defended at the expense of his own happiness. I didn't harbor hatred for him anymore. I had loved him once, and though his weakness had led to our downfall, I hoped that someday he could find peace, just as I was beginning to find mine. Laura and I moved forward, stronger than ever. We both decided to leave the city, starting fresh in a small town where I found a job that reignited my passion, working as a consultant for victims of domestic abuse. My experiences had given me insight into the dangerous, often unseen emotional manipulation that people like Evelyn could inflict on others. It became my mission to help those who felt powerless, like I once had, to regain their sense of self-worth and control over their lives. I rebuilt my life one step at a time, surrounded by supportive people who lifted me up. The house, the money, the things I had once clung to as symbols of stability, they didn't matter anymore. I had something far more valuable: my freedom, my peace, and the strength to never let anyone tear me down again. Evelyn had been a dark force in my life, but in the end, she was defeated, not just by the legal system, but by my refusal to give in to her cruelty. I had won, not through violence or revenge, but through resilience, patience, and a refusal to let her break me. And that, I realized, was the sweetest victory of all.